Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 8th of Feb 2022. We are covering the Hindu newspaper's Delhi edition. Now, as part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice. So there are basically two things. One is naturally about practicing and correlating news from exam point of view. The other thing is that by doing this, we are integrating the static component with the current component. For example, this very news, it is in context of the debate on motion of thanks. Now, if you see, there is hardly any reference to this, but motion of thanks is something that is important. It is in the static component, but something that happened recently. So correlating both things, and this will be very beneficial. In 2-3 months, you will have a very strong foundation of your preparation. Okay, now going beyond this, you can get your answers evaluated. So up to 2 answers per week for free per week. So every week you can share 2 answers with me. And all you have to do is share your handwritten answers. I don't want that comment section thing. So comment section, obviously, it's always good to appreciate and it motivates us. But I want it in the handwritten format because it is in that format that you are actually writing the examination. So handwritten format, share it as a single file, share it as a PDF. There are certain softwares where you can just click and it will make a PDF file. So share it on my Telegram channel or on the WhatsApp. So this you share, and I'm not going to make this public or discuss on the YouTube, right? So this discussion will be, everything will be private, and you'll get a detailed and an honest feedback on the same. Okay. Now we have the following topics, and predominantly this is GS2, right? All the topics that I've highlighted is GS2 and polity. So 3 questions on polity and 1 question on IR. IR is again GS2. Okay. Now before moving ahead, I have this good news. One of my friends, Jashandeep Singh Kang, so he has recently cleared the PCS exam with a very good rank, and he has been deputed in the services. So this is a long drawn struggle of my friend who is as a student as well as a teacher also, colleague of mine. So his struggle, his journey has been documented in this book. And as far as I know him, he writes everything, he wears his heart on his sleeve. So it will be very honest feedback, and it will help you in creating a perspective about your preparation through his journey. So this will be very helpful. So you can buy this, the link is in the description box below. So any of this, Amazon, Flipkart, everywhere it is available. And hopefully we will have him on our channel as well. Okay, so let's do the news first, and then we'll come to the analytical, the question part. So Congress party is pitting states against the centers, says Prime Minister Modi. Find a rhetorical statement where he says that the Congress is criticizing the country, bringing bad name. And they are using the states against the center. Done. Now here, what we see is when we say pitting the states against the center, it is antithetical to cooperative federalism. So cooperative federalism means that the center and states work together. And recently we see on lot of issues, be it about the vaccination issue, be it about the GST related issues or taxation or grants, we find in the recent times that center and states are pitted against one another. And here again we are referring to parties that are not, state governments which are not controlled by the BJP, right? So there we find more of this offense issue. So here particularly we find in the recent times that Congress is not very powerful these days. So it is trying to get a front, it is trying to form a Mahagathbandhan with the regional parties, right? So this is the trend, and this is a trend which we see with reference to, with trends in politics. So we see that first there were 2 national parties, 2 big parties fighting against each other. Now we find greater role of the states. So a question like this was actually asked in the mains paper. We'll discuss it later, because today I want to discuss on motion of thanks. Basically, this debate was taking place with reference to motion of thanks, and therefore I have this question. Now, please do this question because, when you write, you will get greater clarity, and it will also help you with your prelims. Now why I am saying this is that motion of thanks takes place during the first session of the parliament for that year. So every year it takes place at the start. And when is your mains paper? Sometime around October, November, depending on the pandemic. Again, things keep changing. So huge gap, and between this there is no motion of thanks taking place. Therefore, we have to do it right now as well only. So this is important. And between your prelims also there is a bit of a gap. Okay, so describe the instrument of motion of thanks in the parliament and state its significance. So see, this is the article that I have. You can read this. I have highlighted. So basically, motion of thanks is delivered by the president. So president delivers it after, it is delivered on the first session after each general election. That is whenever the elections take place to the Lok Sabha. So after that, whenever the house forms and then when it meets for the first time. So that is the first session. Or at the start first session of each year. So president shall address both houses of parliament. So both houses of parliament assemble together. So we have two houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So they assemble together collectively. They don't sit in their respective houses, they are together. So here the president delivers a speech which is known as motion of thanks. Clear? And they sit together is again mentioned in Article 86 of the Constitution. Okay, now what all things are there in the motion of thanks? Basically, it tells us about the government's policy. So it is a statement of the policy. Review of various activities. For example, the government may say that we did very well in the COVID. We want to improve the healthcare sector, like that. And then the items of legislative business. Now, naturally, all of this, president, as we know, is the nominal head, and president functions on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, right? Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. So, again, keep using this. Article 74 says this. So, it is basically the elected representatives. They tell the president that, see, you have to deliver this. Okay, so motion of thanks is there. Now ultimately the assembly ends, and then it is introduced by the respective leaders of the particular house. So Lok Sabha sits, Rajya Sabha sits. They have discussions, deliberations, debates on this between the government, the ruling party people and the opposition in respective houses. And then it is put to vote in respective houses, this thing, after debates. And the debate concludes, once the opposition expresses their view, the debate concludes by the remark or by the rebuttal from the Prime Minister. So this was basically the concluding remark to the motion of thanks debate. And then it is put to vote. Now, when it comes to Rajya Sabha, right, many times we have seen that, one thing can be there is that the opposition, naturally opposition only. So opposition can say that, see, certain things have not been entered, or you can also say that the members of the house, so certain things have not been addressed, so they need to be incorporated. So some amendments can be introduced, so that can be done. Now amendments, if they are introduced, it is an embarrassment to the government, and normally this is done by the opposition, or opposition may not support it and it may fail to pass. This may happen, as we have today. In Rajya Sabha we have majority of the non-BJP, and in the Lok Sabha we have more than adequate majority of the BJP. So it fails, right? But it is nothing but embarrassment to the government. Nothing happens. But in Lok Sabha we expect that the house, the party that is in majority, they have introduced, so they will be able to get it through. It should pass, it should succeed. But if it fails, that means the government does not enjoy the support of the majority of the house. That goes against this, in the parliamentary system, that means the government does not enjoy the confidence of the house of the people, and therefore it may lead to resignation of the government. Now when it fails, it is pass, it has to pass. But if it fails, then in that case, it does not automatically mean that the government has to resign. But yes, government will have to now prove its majority on the floor of the house. That means no confidence motion bill will be introduced, no confidence motion, and that has to be that the ruling party has to win over this. That is the only solution, right? So this is your motion of thanks. So this is the articles over here. It includes statement of policy, review of various activities, items of legislative business. Now, what is the significance? The question asks you about this instrument, and then it tells you about the significance. Well, you have the government's, it articulates the government's policy, etc. It provides an opportunity to the House to discuss and deliberate on the functioning, on the performance of the government, their agenda. So it provides them a voice on that front and hold the government accountable, right? And if it is not passed, that is also a matter of significance, right? So all of these points have to be articulated in your answer. Now coming to the next news, Supreme Court wraps Tripura police over action on social media posts. So from 2-3 months actually, a riot-like situation, communal tensions are taking place, and obviously social media in these days is used to flare tensions. So, for social media post that is taking place, the police has been arresting them on the grounds of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So this is an anti-terror law, an umbrella law. So under this they are being punished. Now, sometime back, the Supreme Court had provided a stay, and it said to the police that, see, you cannot put people under, you cannot take action over the social media post, and they had given this directive to the police. And if they continue to do so, even after this directive, then in that case, it can take action. It can even call the superintendent of the police, or it can call the Home Ministry controls the police, so it can call the Home Ministry and take action against the secretary of that ministry. Clear? So this again, but I have not taken this issue. I am taking the issue of the power of the Supreme Court to look into this matter. And here comes the concept of court of record. Supreme Court and the High Court of India are the court of record. So what do you understand by the court of record? Explain in Indian context and state its significance. So Supreme Court is using its power as court of record over here. So let me explain. So see, the directives and the judgments of the Supreme Court, they have these proceedings are to be recorded. The court of record says they have to be recorded and they have to be implemented. They have some sort of a legal sanctity, and their judgments also, like we are discussing or debating on a particular issue, then in that case also we quote that Supreme Court had said the following things on a particular view or on a particular case. So we actually rely on that. For example, when we look at the privacy case also, then we say Puttaswamy judgment. So the judgment, proceedings and act of the Supreme Court are recorded for permanent memory and testimony. Right? So their judgments are recorded and they have evidentiary value and they cannot be questioned. And when Supreme Court looks into a particular matter, or even High Court also, then in that case, again, Supreme Court is interpreting law. So when there is a question of law, they are interpreting. When there is a conflict between two parties, they are interpreting the law and giving the verdict. So in that question also, somewhere it has the authority of law. And this cannot be questioned, and this is important. And no matter if Supreme Court has given a verdict, so that is applicable for respective states. And likewise, if a High Court also has given a verdict, it is applicable to everywhere. Till the time it is overruled by a bigger bench or by the Supreme Court, till the time it will be there. And if the directives, judgments, proceedings are, if somebody goes against it, then the Supreme Court has the power to punish for its contempt. So if somebody does not follow, like in this case, the Supreme Court has the power to punish for contempt. And for that, it can also provide for imprisonment or fine. Right? So court of record is clear. It is coming from Article 129 for Supreme Court and 215 for the High Court. So Supreme Court and High Court are both court of records, but below High Courts are subordinate courts, so they are not court of records. So they don't have the power of court of records. So from the article you can refer this. So you can explain in brief and in the Indian context and state its significance. The significance is very simple. First of all, you can write a line after describing it. You can write a line that beyond the points that are already mentioned, like it has evidentiary value and cannot be questioned, it signifies certain other things. For example, the judicial proceedings has a power or authority of the law and they have to be implemented. It reflects the value of unitary nature of the Indian judiciary, even though we are a federal country where there are center and states, but the law is common and judiciary is common. Their orders, decrees, etc. are applicable across the country. It allows the Supreme Court that their orders or whatever they have said has to be implemented. If people stop implementing it, then it will affect the sanctity of the court. It will affect the dignity of the court and ultimately nobody is going to listen to them. So this goes against the values of rule of law, because if the Supreme Court has said something, then it has to be abided by. So that is the rule of law. So if that is not implemented, then there is a problem. So you can refer to the rule of law. And yes, it provides it with the contempt power. So it helps it in securing or protecting the sanctity and the dignity of the court. Right? So this you have to mention in this particular answer. Now here is a question and try to write the answer to it with whichever is there, A, B, C, D. Just write court of record and write the answer. I'll reply to it. Okay. Now comes the next question. Actually, it's all questions only today. So Kerala governor gives assent to the Lok Ayukta Ordinance. Again, ordinance could be a different theme. We'll come to that later. But for today, we are just referring to Lok Ayukta. Right? Lok Ayukta, I have a past year question that was asked in mains. So we'll come to that later. Okay. So basically, just giving you a background about Lokpal and Lok Ayukta. So we have a Lokpal and Lok Ayukta Act. Right? We had this thing, Parliament had enacted this in the year 2013, amended in 2016. We had this Arvind Kejriwal India Against Corruption movement, Anna Hazare movement also. So that was with reference to Lokpal and Lok Ayukta. So they wanted the introduction of an agency which can act as an ombudsman to deal with the issue of corruption. Right? There were so many scams that were taking place at that time. Scam after scam there was in news. So in that case, there was need felt that the existing institutions are not adequate and we need a very powerful agency that can hold everybody accountable, including the Prime Minister of the country. Right? So everybody can be held accountable under the Lokpal and Lok Ayukta Act. So this can be done by the ombudsman. So ombudsman is somebody whom we can go and file a complaint. Clear? So for that, the Lokpal is ombudsman for the center, Lok Ayukta is for the states. So when we talk about the states, it is also CM with reference to Lok Ayukta. So an ombudsman has been created to deal with it, and the existing frameworks of corruption. For example, we have the Prevention of Corruption Act. So even those provisions, the Lokpal can investigate using the powers provided under the Prevention of Corruption Act. So it's an all-powerful agency over here. It is appointed by, the law also provides for the way or the manner in which it is appointed, the selection committee, everything has been mentioned over here. Okay, so this is for the center and the states. Now, coming to this issue of Kerala. So Kerala, they have introduced an amendment to the Lok Ayukta. Right, being a state subject, they have certain powers. So this is basically kind of a model act, kind of a framework. So the states can fine tune things respectively. So that is allowed. So here some changes have been made by the Kerala executives. So they have brought an ordinance to bring about certain changes, and the governor of the state of Kerala was not signing it. He was not agreeing to it. But now he has decided to give his assent. That is, he has signed it. Okay. So what are the issues basically? Because of which they were not signing it. So BJP party, obviously the governor is somewhere it's been appointed by the ruling party, which is from BJP. So BJP had a problem in Kerala and the Congress party had a problem. And they were saying that the Kerala chief minister, the Kerala ruling party, they had certain issues of corruption against them, and to protect themselves, they are bringing this ordinance. Okay, so few features of this is that obviously Lok Ayukta Act is to do with the issue of corruptions in the state government. So it says that there shall be an ombudsman, and if there is a case against, let's say, chief minister, then the governor is the concerned authority. Likewise, as we go lower, there are certain concerned authorities over here. So the ombudsman or the Lok Ayukta, so this ombudsman investigates the issue. Right? If a corruption issue is filed, it investigates it, and then it gives a recommendation or gives whatever thing is there, because I can't be very, because of this issue. So it gives its viewpoint to the concerned authority. In this case, it is the governor. So earlier, whatever, it was required that if a corruption case is proved, then the governor has to remove that person. If the person is found guilty, the person has to be ejected from the service. That was the law. But now it says that this order that has been given, the recommendation that has been given, it is non-binding. So that means that again there is a discretion of the governor over here. There is a problem now. So this we can see. And the governor or the concerned agency can review the decisions or the act of the ombudsman. So therefore this problem was there. And furthermore, it said that not only the judges of the Supreme Court, but also the judges of the former judges can also be appointed. And the tenure has been extended to till the age of 70 years. Right? So 5-year term or till the age of 70. Okay, fine. So this is the issue. Now let's look at the Lokpal and the Lok Ayukta. This is from the PRS over here. So it says in the, everything for the states have been mentioned in the brackets. So for Lokpal, the Lokpal is appointed by the president, and for the state, it is the governor. Now, president appoints, normally for these agencies, the president appoints it on the basis of the recommendation of a selection committee. So this includes the Prime Minister, Speaker of the lower house, Lok Sabha, Speaker of the opposition of the lower house, Chief Justice of India. In the case of High Court, it is the Chief Justice of High Court, like that, right? You can read this actually. Again, these are important. The members of the selection committee, everybody knows who appoints. It is the president. But which of the following is part of the selection committee? This is important for prelims, both for center and the states. Okay. Now, the Lokpal includes the chair plus 8 members. So one chairman and up to 8 members. So up to maximum 8, and this includes the chairman as well. And of this, 50% has to be reserved. So 50% of these, 50% is reserved. So it should be amongst the SC, ST, OBC, minorities and women. And 50% of the posts shall be of the people who are judicial members. And non-judicial members should have some sort of experience, about 25 years of experience in anti-corruption policy, public administration, vigilance and finance. And they can be removed by the president only, subject to an inquiry by the Supreme Court. Who else is removed this way, by the way? You can write this in the comment section. This will be a good recap of your polity. So who else is... So when this complaint is filed, it is inquired by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court tells the president, and they have to remove. Okay, only thing is that it has to be signed by 100 MPs and they have to file this issue. Now here's the question. A national Lokpal, however strong it may be, cannot resolve the problems of immorality in public affairs. So first of all, you have to bring about the issue of corruption, how it affects. You have to tell about the Lokpal, right? So when you do that, you talk about the powers. Then you come to the issue of the basic issue of immorality in public affairs. You have to refer to that. That what if, when we look at the issue of corruption also, it is between two people. It is between the public official and the public. Public who wants to gain, who wants to give money. Now, so sometimes they want ease of service also, so they are willing to pay also. But then it leads to corruption and other things. So till the time we are not able to stop this, and in this case we have to look at the morality of the citizens and the public, the stakeholders, different stakeholders, we have to do that also. Now here you can also refer to the issue of Kautilya's views on corruption, right? Sam, Dam, Dand, Ved. So that also you can refer. You can refer to the expression of him comparing the fish with water. So likewise, we cannot stop a fish from drinking the water. Likewise with the public official who is with the public, right? No matter what law we say, then again there will be an issue. Okay, so this question was asked and these two things are being compared over here. Now, as far as I am concerned, since this question is already asked, I feel that with reference to corruption, don't see it as a theme these days, but Lokpal, and if an amendment is made to certain changes or a critical assessment of the functioning of the Lokpal, this could be a theme that we need to prepare, right? So that I'll go when the proper thing, when we have this means actually coming up. So maybe that time we'll go into it, but for the time being, just do this. Okay, there was this image and something critical that, people are not following the COVID-19 norms. But what we are concerned is from prelims perspective. So we have this religious ceremony that was going. This is also known as the car festival, annual car festival known as Kodiyal Thiru. And this is in Mangaluru. And this is the chariot of Sri Venkat Ramana. Right, so these things we need to know about, these festivals and other things. So these are things that are there in news and classic thing for prelims, art and culture. So with reference to Ramana god, important deity, so it is a form of Hindu god Vishnu. Is the presiding deity of Tirumala Venkateshwara temple in Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh. Now, very important, notes for India as the digital trade juggernaut rules on. Let me explain you with a brief context. I have this question also, you can read this. So let me just give you a brief context on the issue and then we'll refer to the article. So I have this question, randomly I have framed this, but I feel if you can write this, this will really help you with your understanding, and these topics are rarely mentioned. So many countries have expressed their intention to commence WTO negotiation on trade-related aspects of electronic commerce. Now, this is not e-commerce, first of all. We are not just talking about Amazon, Flipkart. Not in the conventional sense. I refer to the laptops, the mobile phones, the internet connectivity, everything with reference to that. Ads on the digital platform, everything. Highlight India's concern and suggest a suitable course of action. That is how should India approach this. Because if you are able to write this, so you will be referring to the issue of trade related aspects of electronic commerce, the role of WTO in this activity, India's concerns, India's apprehensions, the steps that India should take, the way forward. So conclusively the topic will be covered once and for all. So thereon you don't have to read any opinion once your answer is done. Okay, so first of all, let's come to WTO. So WTO, where is it located and other things for prelims, right? Please research that. Now WTO is basically an organization that is to promote globalization, global trade and commerce takes place, right? Now when trade and commerce has to take place across the world, some sort of a consensus has to be there with reference to rules, regulations, taxations, right? Otherwise each country would like to have rules that are preferable to that country, other country would like the same way. So having some sort of a consensus, that is the idea of WTO, so that some liberal policies are there so that the world can trade easily. And if there is a conflict between the countries, then they can appeal to the WTO and have a corrective measure. So the idea is to promote global trade. And for that purpose, the WTO sets certain rules, certain conditions, which the member countries have to abide by. So these rules, they frame, this influence the domestic policy of respective countries. Okay, so we have WTO with reference to lot of trade here. Solar manufacturing, National Solar Mission was questioned because of this, right? So all that, most of the trade, agriculture also. Now with reference to this, now there is a talk that electronic commerce is emerging, and please, this is not e-commerce like Amazon, it's not restricted to this, many more things. So when we refer to e-commerce, I'm basically talking about trade in electronics or digital goods, services. We are referring to intellectual property and development, right? So these things, basically everything possible aspect on this. So the e-commerce is emerging, electronic commerce, and for that purpose, to have some sort of rules so that the world countries can work together on that. There is liberalization, there is promotion of trade and prosperity. Now, there is an initiative known as JSI. So this is an initiative known as Joint Statement Initiative. So Joint Statement on Initiative, which is a group that wants e-commerce negotiations to start at the WTO. So these are the countries like Australia, Japan, Singapore, which controls about 90% of e-commerce trade. So they want, actually anybody who was wanting this thing would want to do this because they want liberalization, they want the access to the various markets so that they benefit. That is the core idea, right? So they want this. Now what has happened is, this is being objected by developed countries. Are very keen on this thing, they have an advantage on this front, but developing countries including India have a concern. They are objecting to this. India, on grounds of legal aspects, they are saying that we do not want a negotiation, and furthermore they are saying that, see, we have already pending issues like agreement on agriculture, Doha round. So first conclude that, and then we will move to the e-commerce and other aspects. Clear? So both have certain concerns. Now specifically with reference to India, we have a concern with reference to localization of data, also known as data sovereignty, right? So data localization, that is, this Facebook, Google and all those things that are operating, Gmail also, all our data is being stored on US servers. Now we are demanding that, see, data is very, very important, and the data should be stored within the geography of our country. So data localization, we should have data sovereignty, that is, the government of India should have control over that data. They can make laws on that, and those laws are implemented. At the present moment, it is the US government that controls and have sovereignty over our data, because our data is stored somewhere else. Okay, so data sovereignty is done. So data localization, then we have disclosure of source code. So the government wants that, see, especially developing countries, that the algorithm that is used for programming, that should be disclosed, that it is not used for bad things or some cheating or deceiving, etc. So it should be disclosed publicly. Disclosure should be there with the government. Now this leads to intellectual property rights. This leads to data localization, data sovereignty, compliance cost, right? So this is a difficulty because you will not need to have servers and other things over here. Now, we have countries like Germany, etc. Now I'm going beyond a bit of this opinion page. So Germany, etc. feel that our rules, regulations are not very good. So integrity of the data will get affected. So we have concerns, but primarily data sovereignty and disclosure of source code, these are certain issue. I think I'll add one more over here, not listed directly, with reference to custom duties. When something is imported to our country, for example, this iPhone is very expensive in India, whereas some say that you can take a flight to Dubai and buy the iPhone and come back. Still, your phone will be cheaper than what it is to buy it in India. Why? Because we are paying excessive duty on something that is coming to our country, and this is a great source of revenue. But when it comes under the WTO, then in that case, the government will have to reduce the rates. So this will again encroach into the domestic policy making. So policy making, I've gotten more points actually than when I created my analysis. Okay, so these are the issues with India over here. India, particularly the developing countries as well. Now we are concerned about India. Now the thing is that let's come back to the JSI, Joint Statement Initiative. So the JSI is saying that it's a coterie of developed countries. Now it is saying that it wants to expand. And it is inviting more and more people. So they were wanting to have negotiations, but JSI, in a way, it is forming its own initiative, these countries. And so these more and more countries will be part of this thing, and they will create rules, regulations, agreement, etc. So some sort of a pact would be formed. Now, what should India do in this context? Should India go with this and be party to this agreement, or India should be neutral? This is the debate, this is the policy issue that India needs to consider. Because if India becomes part of it, and if it says that, see, data localization you cannot do, or you have to keep the taxes low, then it will affect the revenue of a country, right? Or you do not have the disclosure of the source code, all those things, then it will affect the interest of the country. But if India is not part of an agency that is making rules and regulations, if India is not on a body or on a table that is making rules, policies for the world, then India is at a disadvantage. And precisely this, with reference to earlier initiatives also, like Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership and Comprehensive Trans-Pacific Partnership. Then we also have Asia-Pacific Partnership. We are not part of it, and therefore we lose out on the great economic integration those countries have, and they greatly benefit because of that, but we are not part of it. Now please, these are important for prelims. Can you please Google the countries? Briefly, I'll tell you, RCEP is a China-led initiative. So these are Asian countries and China, but no USA. And Comprehensive Trans-Pacific Partnership, if you imagine the map of India, so imagine the map of the world, Pacific area particularly. So my hand right and left comes opposite of what it is. So basically we have the Pacific side on the eastern side, USA side on the eastern side, and then the China and the Southeast Asia. So there China is not there. Basic thing, simple. So Asia Pacific region. So we stand to lose out because of that. And more the delay that takes place on the India's side, more and more these countries develop. They have the rules, they get comfortable with it, but we remain behind because of that. Now there are, this person says that we need to be part of the agreements. So there is something known as Digital Economy Partnership Agreement. So these are between Singapore, Chile and New Zealand. Please, these are very important for prelims. These countries, they ask, okay. So we can have something like this where we can have various modules that you want this, you can pick this, you want this, you can pick this. So something like that. But we have to be part of this, otherwise we'll be losing out on opportunities to shape the rules. This is something that we should not miss out on. Now, when you write your answers, everything has to be disclosed, but the aspect of suitable course of action, and these points can be mentioned. I'll highly, recommend that you can just take a screenshot of this and this also, because or you can just jot down your things in your own way. So that will help you with these pointers. The quality of answers will be much better if you prepare it now. Okay. Universalize Maternity Benefit Scheme, says activist. Now, obviously, this we are referring to the prelims part. But what government measures are the government taking for the vulnerable sections? That is mentioned in your GS2. This is part of the syllabus. Okay. So there is this Pradhan, Mantri, Matru, Vandana, Yojana. Right. So this is the scheme. So Matru, right? So we are referring to that. So this scheme, I'll come to the, first I'll tell you about the scheme, then the issue. So this scheme provides for, when a mother gives birth to a child, so in that process, to ensure good nutrition is provided and the loss of waste that takes place, so the government is compensating and it is providing 5,000 rupees per month. Now the scheme is additionally, it is integrated with another scheme known as Janani Suraksha Yojana, which is basically to encourage the woman to give a child in institutional setups. So institutional delivery is being encouraged, and that will result in better reduced maternal mortality rate and the infant mortality rate. Obviously, with proper hospitals with good health care, that this thing should improve. So if this is done, then in that case 1,000 additional money will be provided. So 6,000 rupees. Right, so all the expenses that are there, when we talk about the Janani Suraksha Yojana, so all the expenses that the woman would have to bear, that will be compensated by this scheme. Okay. Now this money that is being provided, 5,000 rupees or 6,000, this money that is being provided, it is provided in installments in various installments. So in the first installment, it is when she comes for checkup, right? So to inculcate this health seeking behavior, if you give it in a lump sum manner, that entire money is given, then she may not fulfill the commitments. So in the first, when she comes for checkup, 1,000 rupees provided for early registration of pregnancy, 2,000 rupees for antenatal checkup after 6 months of pregnancy, and 2,000 after registration of the childbirth and vaccinations. So that is the basic idea. Now the issue, everything seems good till now, except for I feel the compensation is very less. But up till now, the scheme was limited to one child only. Now the recent, the budget thing, the announcement has been made that money can be provided for another additional child, provided this child is a girl child. Now think about it. Once the girl child is born, then the money will be provided. What does this mean? This is not an incentive. You can't decide whether a girl or a boy. But yes, it is a thing to propose that girl should be born, right? Encouraging a girl child. But then the parent still needs compensation. The child still needs nutritional support, institutional delivery, vaccinations. And to say that a girl is being, I mean, it is, if a boy is there, then those things will not be provided. That seems a bit unfair. Okay, so this is there. Then it says it is violative of an act, National Food Security Act, where the woman and the lactating mother are to be entitled to certain benefits. So these benefits will be taken away. Then the scheme will be provided only when we have the girl child, because we cannot define if a boy is there or a girl is there during the pregnancy. It is only when the child is born. So only after the delivery this will be provided. So this is again wrong. And furthermore, this will create a bureaucratic nightmare, right? So these are certain wrongs. So therefore, the activists are raising concerns over this, and they are saying that please just universalize this, make it applicable to everybody. End of story. Okay. Yeah, one more thing is, because of the COVID-19, this contraceptives were not being provided, right? Everybody was devoted to the COVID-19 issue, then lockdowns were there. So contraceptives were not given, and you are penalizing the mother or the family for not providing them contraceptives, and if they have 2 children, so they have it. So this was a responsibility of the government. Okay, now this is important for prelims, and for mains you can watch up my video, Human Trafficking in India, right? So this very short video of 12 minutes 18 seconds. So every single aspect is covered over there with conventions, schemes, everything. Okay, now Railway Protection Force has introduced to curb human trafficking, they have introduced Operation Ahat. So they have introduced this. So the basic thing is, I mean, you all know, right? Police have their own railway police force. Okay. So with this rails, it provides some sort of a very assured kind of a transport for human traffickers. So this is being used. This is a well-known thing. So to stop this operation has been initiated. Now, with reference to human trafficking, we know that these people are some pushed into as bonded laborers, or they are pushed into prostitution, right? Organ transplants, etc. So for this, they are introducing the scheme, and furthermore, in this, they will identify particular stations from where there is high probability of human trafficking to take place. They are finding ways of collecting, collating, and analyzing data. They will collect data, and on that basis, they will identify route, destination, and popular trains where we can expect more incidents of trafficking. And furthermore, it is saying that this data, whatever is collected, they will try to work with the local police, state police. So police is a state subject, so they'll be working with that. And they will also have a cyber branch. So cyber aspect will also be there, because most of the communication is taking place by the digital means. So using this, they will try to deal with the issue of trafficking. Right. So this is it. This is it from my side today. You can watch this video. It will be helpful. So this is it. Bye bye. Take care and all the best.